So tonight we have Chris Witt. Chris has been taking apart dice and board games for, I'm pretty sure I read 40 years, but Chris, you don't look that old.
I'm
Um,
I'm flattered. Thank you.
and he's built his own game. I believe it came out in 2018 or 2019 called Deep Drive Baseball. And Derek, unless you got anything to say, we'll hand it right over to Chris.
No, Chris, yeah, go ahead and you can get started. If you want to just give us an idea of, how you got started with the game, what teams you followed growing up, that kind of thing. And then if you're up for doing a demo of an inning or two of the game, that would be great. And then we can do some
I
Q&A.
Yeah, I could do that. Yes, hello everyone. I'm Chris Witt. I started selling a game called Deep Drive Baseball in I think 2017, but time just sort of goes by sometimes and I don't keep track of it. It just goes too quickly. So yeah, I mean, I think I started playing card and dice sport simulations when I was like 8 or 9 years old. My older brother, was a big APA player and just got started with that. And then I think I didn't want to play exactly what he played, so I think I picked up something from like an old Baseball Digest ad or something for KSP Sports. I don't know if anybody has ever even heard of that. I think it was put out by Dave Koch or Koch, however he pronounces his name, who does Action PC now. So I think he only sold that game for 2 years. But yeah, it's just sort of been something I've played with my whole life. But I think I also have always enjoyed taking things apart, especially simulations. I just like to try to figure out. It's hard for me to play a game and not start saying, how did they come up with these ratings? Or how did they come up with the chances on these cards or what have you? So just always enjoyed, our basement right now, to my wife's chagrin, is sort of a museum, I think, for various tabletop sports games. She'd probably like me to have a lot of those out of here, but yeah, I think I'm rambling, but I'd always just created games just for like a lark, just sort of a hobby. Um, and at some point, yeah, around 2016 or so, I had started to kind of focus on the game that is now Deep Drive Baseball. And I kind of just thought to myself, or might have said it to my wife even, like, I wonder if anybody would buy this if I tried to sell it. So it's just sort of like, I kind of, I'm sort of somebody who has just very low expectations in a lot of ways. So my honest thought was, if I sell one copy, that'd be kind of cool. Like, that'd be all right. I'd be cool with that. Um, I don't have exact sale figures here, but it is more than one copy. It's done pretty well, and every once in a while I lurk on some of the various, Delphi forums and things like that. I try not to really interact. I'll just, like I said, sort of spy in guest mode or something. But generally speaking, I seem to get pretty positive reviews, so I just kept going. And that's where I'm at now. I usually put out the most current season. I try to put out, there's been sometimes I put it out the night of game 162. But lately I've been trying to wait because the cards often include things like world champions on it or whatever. And obviously I can't really put that on the cards after the final day of the season. I have to wait until the playoffs are done. So sometimes I'll wait until, you know, the final out of the final game of the World Series. And usually I just have my finger hovering over the publish button, for my email blast, and I'm just watching the game. And as soon as that last out, bam, out goes the email blast. So, um, yeah, so I can give you a demo. It is I guess what you'd call a 50-50 game. We use percentile dice. Half the results are read off the batter card, half the results off the pitcher card. So I can share my screen here. Let's see if I can get this. So yeah, put together just a slide here with what some of the cards would look like. I think last winter I put out a poll just like, hey, what do people want to see? Which season do they want to see me, put out? And 1975 was the top vote getter. So, all right, 1975 it is. And that's what I'll use here for the demo. On the left side, we have the first three batters that are due up for the big red machine here, the 75 Reds. You'll see on the left side of each batter card is a grid that goes from 0 through 49. So when you roll your percentile dice, in short, if you get a result between 0 and 49, you're reading from the batter card. If you get 50 to 99, you'd be reading off the pitcher card. In this example, Jim Palmer is the pitcher for Baltimore. So I put together a very hacky dice roller just so that I don't have to do anything where I'm panning down to the screen. So let me know if you see this horrible looking ASCII thing. Do you see my 7, 8, and 9 roll here? Or no?
No,
you don't.
see it.
There we go. There it is. All right. So in this case, I just have a roll. You roll 3 10-sided dice. Typically, I think the rule book calls for red, blue, and green, but it doesn't really matter as long as you're keeping track of things. The first 2 dice kind of form your percentile roll from 0 through 99. And that last die, the green die, is just often called like the modifier die, and we can talk about how that comes into play on some of these rolls. One of the big reasons for that modifier die is to sort of overcome one of the shortcomings that can come up with 50-50 games. So, for example, in a 50-50 game, if you have a batter with 600 plate appearances, and let's say the league average for 600 plate appearances was 10 homers. Well, the 50-50 engine generally relies on getting about 5 homers off the pitcher card and 5 off the batter card. But now what if you have a batter who hit 1 home run? Okay, well, you're still going to get the 5 off the pitcher card, and just having 1 homer probably results in no batter, then the batter card not having any home run results. So you still end up with a guy who only hit 1 home run hitting 5 because he's getting them off the pitcher's card. The modifier die can kind of be used with these rare readings that you'll see show up on the cards to sort of work around that. Anyhow, I digress. In this roll, we have a 78 on our percentile dice, the red and the blue die, and a 9 for our modifier die. So 7, 8, and 9. We're going to go back to our cards. We have Rose against Palmer. Because our roll was 78, we're actually going to be looking at Palmer's card. And you'll see there is a range of results there, 74 through 99, which is an out. That roll of 78 falls in that range. When you have an out, you're going to look on that player's card in the row of results that are numbered 0 through 9 with different out types underneath them. So in this case, we had a green modifier die of 9. So it's a fly out to center field, a shallow fly out to center. That's what the F8S is. And if there were runners on base, you'd be able to look that code up and see how that affects the base runners. So our first batter was Rose against Palmer, shallow fly out to center. Going to go ahead and do another roll. 93 with a 5. That's another out. We'll go back to our cards. 93 falls in that out range of Palmer. The 5 shows a hard ground out to second base, G4H. As you might guess, that is usually a double play ball if there is a runner on first and less than 2 out. So Palmer's retired the first 2 batters. We've got Joe Morgan against Palmer. 1 more roll. 14 is probably a good roll for Morgan to get on base. 14 with a modifier of 0. And Morgan, no surprise, that fat 466 on base percentage. 14 gives him a walk. Now, this is actually, the game engine actually has something that's sort of like a hybrid of automated steals and steals that you can call on your own. So let's see if I can find my rule page here. Here it is, stealing bases. At the conclusion of a plate appearance, if a runner is on first or second and the base ahead of them is empty, calculate their jump value. Because the modifier die, don't worry, I'll go back to the cards. Plus the first number next to their steal, plus or minus pitcher's hold, plus or minus catcher's throwing rating. If it's 9 or less, the runner must hold. So I know Joe stole a lot of bases. Let's see. Our modifier die was 0. Morgan's steal number here is a 4. Up at the top of his card, sorry, you probably can't see where I'm pointing, but up at the top of his card, beneath Joe Morgan, it says second base 4, which is his fielding rating. And below that, it says steal 4.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd add 4 to 0, the modifier die. We'd find Jim Palmer's hold rating, which is on the right side of his card. It says hold +1, which means he tends to allow more stolen bases than your average pitcher. So that brings us up to a 5. Let me find the catcher is Elrod Hendricks. Below Hendricks, it says catcher 4, T +0. So that's his throwing rating, just +0. So at this point, we've taken Morgan's 4 steal rating. We've added 1 from the hold, and we've gotten up to a total of 5. We go back to the rules. 9 or less, runner must hold. So Morgan stays at first. Obviously, once you've played a few times, that becomes a lot more intuitive, but we're just walking through every possible step here. So Morgan's drawn a walk with 2 outs. Here's Johnny Bench. Let's see what our next roll is. Okay, 0-2. That is going to be in the DD, which is a deep drive. So Bench has clobbered it. We roll again with the percentile dice, and we check Bench's deep drive section on his card. 0-1. Wow, we're getting a chance to really show off a lot of features of the game. That just was not planned that way, but it's working out. 0-1 on the deep drive section falls in the 0 to 0-3 range, and that calls for park. So at that point, we're going to see if it is a home run or not, based on the park we are playing in. This game is in Baltimore, Memorial Stadium. We see which side Bench bats from. He is a right-handed batter. We go back and we look at our modifier die, which is a 7. And it's not going to have the distance. That is a deep fly out to center. Bench flies out to the wall in center field, stranding Morgan, and Palmer gets away with it. So we can now head to the bottom of the first if you'd like to proceed. Or if you have a decent idea of how this all works, we can cut it short there. Keep going?
Yeah, I would say keep going. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do one more. All right, we have Belanger against Gary Nolan. First roll is a 73 with a 5 mod. 73 falls in the out range of Nolan. Our green die was a 5, which says this is Belanger grounding out to second. Next up is Blair. 45 is probably an out. 45 is in the out range, and the 1 shows us that it's a harmless pop out to third. So Nolan retires the first 2 Oriole batters, and the DH Tommy Davis comes up with 2 outs. There's a roll of 56. Back to the cards. A roll of 56 needs to be read off the pitcher's card. For Gary Nolan, that shows SI plus. That is a single. The plus generally means runners advance 2 bases. Not always the case. In this case, it doesn't matter because nobody's currently on base. All right, we're going to go to the next batter, Lee May. And that's a 29. Share the cards again. 29 is an out. Lee May has popped out to first. Our modifier die was a 1, so we're going to find that P3 there. So both teams are held scoreless in the first inning. And that is a sample of play for Deep Draft Baseball.
So I have a question for you regarding, I guess, you can order the various seasons. How many players do you generally create a card for?
Yeah,
And
this is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Derek.
yeah, and I guess the other half is what do you do with players who have kind of a limited number of plate appearances or innings?
Yeah. So because the game is available in PDF only right now, have the luxury of basically being able to provide every player who appeared. So if they made an appearance, they threw to a single batter, had one batter faced, had one plate appearance, they have a card. In some cases, I think I've had to do special cards for, weird cases like was that Herb Washington or whatever, was like a full-time pinch runner in was that 70? I don't remember what year that is. You guys probably know.
I believe.
All right, there you go. Or one year, I think I actually 2016, because I think he got hurt in the first or second game of the year, Schwarber, and I went ahead and created a card that was based just on, like, there was the card that was based on, the 4 or 5 plate appearances he had that year, but there was also a side card that was made just based on the playoff plate appearances that he had. Oh, I don't think I actually answered your question, Derek, but yes, every player is available. When you buy the game, you're going to get sort of like core sheets, I guess I would say, of for each team. And typically that includes, for modern season, it tends to be like the 35 most used players for that team that are on, like if you have a 2023 Texas Rangers PDF, it's probably going to have the stadium card on it and 35 player cards. For the other player cards not included, there's sort of like an extras PDF that includes every player. Like I said, even if they only had one plate appearance or one batter faced. So, and yeah, that's because, like you said, in some cases, some of these games, it's like, do I really need a card based on just 3 plate appearances? Like, what if they went 2 for 3? That's obviously a little skewed, but I know that there's people who like to do, as played season replays, and maybe they say like, well, I'm not going to use this, this ringer card outside of the game that they actually, started in. So does that answer the question, or?
Yes, yeah.
Cool.
I guess that, to follow on to that, like it would be difficult to rate such a player, like you said, off such a limited amount of plate appearances, unless they appeared in a previous season or something, or so.
I've thought about doing that before, where, like you said, if you can kind of say like, well, they only, I don't know, I thought that would be interesting with all games I've played with, actually, like to say, well, had this guy been healthy, these are the stats that they probably would have done. But again, that kind of depends on how the replayer wants to play the game, I guess. Some people like it to be as close to accurate as it historically was, and I think other folks want to play these games and sort of do a little bit of a what if. So it's hard to say what the right way to do that is, I guess.
Chris, I had a few comments or questions. On the last topic that Derek just raised, something I've been doing in my homebrew teams is putting together a fringe batters and a fringe pitchers card.
Mm-hmm.
And I know not everybody likes that idea, but it kind of addresses a little bit the small sample size issue, but gives you a representative player, because whatever they did in real life in 4 or 5 at bats is just a statistical anomaly, no matter what they did. But your game is pretty cool. I think I came across it one other time, and I like the deep drive roll.
I need to come up with a better named game. Jeez.
No, it's a great name. I suspect some of it from a game design standpoint is kind of like a split result, maybe on a strat card or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Sure.
Given that you only have like 6 primary results down the left-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. And one observation, one question. I saw on your Gary Nolan card, he never walked anybody. So he was one of your outliers that you're talking about. And so he has it looked like he had a rare indication by his walk result. So I presume he doesn't walk anybody himself and he takes away some of the better walks. Is that how that works?
Oh, yeah, let me go ahead and share real quick. I can actually touch on something else you said as well, if I remember to circle back on it. But yeah, are you seeing the cards again?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually one of those places that I think when I was talking earlier about how the modifier die can kind of interplay with that rare reading. So let's say, for example, Don Baylor's up here and you roll a 14. So that is a walk on his card. However, because the opposing pitcher, Nolan, has that rare reading, you would then have to check that modifier die.
Mhm.
And if the modifier die is a 0 through 6, the walk holds up. But if it's a 7 through 9, you change it to out number 7, out number 8, or out number 9 on Nolan's card. So yes, in that way, it's sort of like, I might be generalizing, but it's probably more complicated than this. But instead of saying, Nolan is going to walk people at 50% of the league rate, it's more like 35% of the league rate, most likely.
Right. Yeah, that was a cool way of doing that.
And yeah, what you said about the sort of fringe cards, in a way, that's sort of what I've done with the pitcher batting cards. I've sort of lumped, because I have a card for every single player. Yes, you do end up having individual pitcher batting cards as well. But if you're bothered by that, as yes, I also can be, rather than saying like, oh, this guy went 0 for 7 with 4 strikeouts and therefore he's never able to get a hit, or whatever. You can kind of lump people together into these buckets, and that's sort of what I've done here. So a lot of these are just aggregates, and you've sort of pooled a lot of different pitchers together, and maybe they're rated a B batter or a C batter or, things like that. Same idea.
The other question I had is what you base your park cards on, particularly as it relates to home runs.
I believe I don't want to give away all my formulas here, but I believe it's based on
I can ask a different question if you want.
no, it is based on left-right splits and homers, basically homer rates for balls put in play, I think is how I'm doing it right now.
So let me ask it a different way.
Sure.
So let's say Memorial Stadium for Baltimore there didn't change its dimensions from year to year. Is it possible that the ballpark card may look different from one year to the next?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, these are year to year ballpark cards. They're not based on like a rolling 3-year average or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, I've just started to look at ballpark cards in other sims, and I'm a little bit of a skeptic in some regards. Although I like the concept generally, I'm not sure I like the idea that what happened in the season is the driver, as opposed to the dimensions of the park or what have you. But
Yeah.
I guess one last question, if I can sneak one in. So when you do quantify the
Oh,
ballpark,
sorry, Steve. It says your time is up.
oh no,
I'm just kidding, Steve. Keep going.
Okay. One last question related to all that then. So once you have quantified whatever the ballpark effect will be, I presume you have a way then to take that out of each batter's performance so that they're ballpark neutral.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, it is. Yeah, it's not going to be. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to double dip, I guess I would say maybe. Yeah,
Okay.
so exactly.
It looks like a great concise game, not more than it's not trying to be more than it is, but it looks pretty good.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, I think a lot of things were like, when I look back at it, it's sort of, for me, kind of turned into a hybrid of a lot of different games that I'd played. So, for example, I know I mentioned playing a bit of APBA like when I was really young. And, there were things that I really liked about like the basic game, but then there were some little things here and there like, oh, it would be cool if, once I played games that had stadium effects, it was kind of like, I wonder what it would take to just add a little stadium effect into an already existing game engine, for example. So just lots of things like that, where I like you said, I didn't want it to be a huge part. Like I didn't end up doing like, oh, different stadiums have different batter eyes or different amount of foul territory, so we're also going to affect how often there's a wild pitch or a pass ball, or how good is the infield dirt, or do people steal bases easier because it's turf, or like it starts to get out of control. So like you said, I was just like, I'm just going to do homers and that's it. I didn't want to touch any other aspect of it. I chose not to because I didn't want it to get out of hand.
Thank you.
Oh, Joe has her hand up. Nope, Joe, we get to play Zoom bingo by saying somebody is on mute.
Hi.
Hey, Joe.
Okay, so I've actually played the game.
Okay.
Or tried to. And when I say tried to, it's like I keep looking for things and going back to rules. And so I haven't played it a lot. Two things, righty lefty.
Mm-hmm.
The platooning, how does that work? You mentioned with ballparks it can make a difference. Is that the only place where you see a righty lefty split?
It is predominantly, that was again sort of to what I was talking about with Steve. That was sort of a conscious decision to not really make that a huge part of the game.
Okay.
I didn't want to have, I think part of it honestly is because so many of us are, sorry to say, getting older and our eyes are getting weaker, and I didn't want to have to cram more content into the card, and I didn't want separate columns for left and right. Or if I don't want to play lefty righty, I just want to have one card that's just, one column for everybody. So that's part of it. But there are a few things that I did for like, you'll see in the rules, there are some things that it's sort of designed to account for players who are maybe more platoon type players. There are some rules in place that you'll see their batter handedness will have a circle around it, and there's certain rules that tell you what that means. And it's essentially just designed for, certain batters who were clearly platoon players, like a righty, to be encouraged. It's to encourage the gamer to not start against other right-handed pitchers.
So you don't necessarily want to start Willie McCovey versus Sandy Koufax.
Something like that. Yeah. It tends to be a rule that's applied more to guys who, it's pretty obvious when you see a guy that had 70 games played and only 80 plate appearances, like, okay, this was probably a platoon player.
Yes. Okay. One more question. Printing. The thing that has slowed me down playing the game, that I print the players out and print out sheets of teams. And I don't cut the cards up. Have you given any thought to just a simple reformatting so that they could be printed on 3x3 perforated paper?
Honestly, no, but I could definitely look into that. I think I'd have to, it would change like the what's the words on the ratios, like the dimension card of the cards. So I could look into that, but I have not yet.
Either that or a printer would be really nice.
Oh, I agree with that. As everybody knows, a lot of the printing costs right now are pretty ridiculous, but that is definitely the number one most asked question that I get is, when will you have printed cards available? And I have no answer for that yet.
Even if it's not every player, even if it's just only, I tend to play really old seasons, so I have like your 1889 season or a 19th century season you made.
Love it. Yeah.
And I love that. But yeah, I don't need every card, but I need enough to field a team.
Yeah, and I think again that's why in answer to Derek's question earlier, I kind of tried to make the sort of like a base PDF with the most commonly used cards, because yes, that tends to be how I do replays as well, where I'm not a big as played replayer. I'm sort of like, let me just play with the guys that were used most often, and if there's enough injuries that come up and I need to use some of those fringe guys that only had a handful of at-bats, I'll look at the PDF at that point, but I'm probably not going to bother printing them out.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris, I've just got a couple of quick questions. Well, and a comment, actually. First of all, sometimes we get the simulator people with their games and that, and I end up completely confused. So this game I actually followed quite easily. So I think I could actually play this game.
Oh, good.
Have you or have people replayed whole seasons? And I'm curious how close they come to actual.
That's hard. Yeah, I mean, I have a problem being positive about myself, I guess is a way to put it. But I did see at least one person, I can't remember their name or their channel, but if you go on YouTube and look up the game, there have been a few people who have posted full season replays, and even I was like very pleasantly surprised. Like, I felt like my math was good and that I had done all the homework and double checked everything and dotted my I's and crossed my T's. But until you actually see somebody do it, you're kind of like fingers crossed a little bit. I can't remember what season it was, but somebody did a full replay, and yeah, their numbers were all, I always kind of shoot for about between, within a maybe 1% of the actual rates. And that tended to be where everything was as far as, batting average on base, slugging, ERA, whip, walks per nine, like all that kind of stuff was right around that 1% to 2% margin. I was like, okay, that's cool. I think with
great.
some of these games, it's a little hard because there are some things that are left up to the manager's discretion. For example, how frequently stolen bases are attempted. That's always hard to put too much stock into, whether it's my game or anybody else's game engine. Like, I know Strat, for example, if the manager just says, I never want to steal, you don't have to steal. With APA, I believe, the stolen bases are completely automated. So in that game engine, you'd probably hope to see that the stolen bases totals are close to historically accurate. So
No, that's awesome if they're hitting that close. I'm just always curious by that. But
yeah,
open it
no.
up to other people. I jumped in, so
I like to jump in too. I have played the Guardians the last 2 years, and they've come out pretty close to being accurate. In fact, this year I just completed, the record was exactly the same.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And I love your game. I really do. And I did post on Facebook my stats from last year. I haven't done this year's yet, but I intend to do that. So it looked like everything was coming out pretty good, but I really do like your game. My only question is I struggle with the stolen bases.
Okay. Yeah.
And it seems like it's so hard to get a number to attempt to steal. So what I did is Terry Porter is a big fan of your game. I'm sure you're well aware of that. And he suggested bypassing that and just kind of doing average attempts for each player. So I did that for like the second half of my replay, and I did get a lot more steals.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry. I'm gonna wait till you're done, Dave.
That's right. And but all in all, I'm very happy. I really follow the same lineups. I of course do different pitchers, relief pitchers, and stuff. So that would, like you suggested, skew the stats a little bit because if you use different than what they really used. But I like it because it's a quick game, and one thing that gentleman brought up about printing, what I do is I print the American League teams because that's who they play majority of the time. And the
Sure.
National League teams, I do Excel spreadsheet on each guy, and I cut and paste from your PDFs, and I just put the players on sheets with each team, and that seems to work out all right too. So that's a suggestion I might give to the group.
Yeah, I think I might have. I don't know if I saw you post something somewhere with that spreadsheet approach or not, but I thought that
No, I haven't. That one I haven't done, but it works out pretty good. There's a snippet tool, and it works
Oh,
real
sure.
good with Excel. So
Yeah. Okay, now I'm trying to remember what it was I was going to circle back to and say. Actually, I know that somebody is handling a Facebook group for it. I'm not involved. I left Facebook several years ago, so I have no presence there, but it's good to
Yeah.
know people are talking about the game there. That's cool.
yeah, there's a lot of conversation there, and like I said, I'm going to post probably in the next few days my final results for last year. So
Okay,
I'm kind of
awesome.
looking forward to next season, Guardians, since they're playing so good this year.
Yes, they're a fun team to watch for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I know the other thing I was going to say is, yeah, just circle back on what you said. Yeah, that's sort of the unavoidable aspect of, I think, these simulation games is that we're sort of blessed with the gift of hindsight. So, sometimes in, real major leagues, there might be a guy who had a, you know, 5+ ERA out of the bullpen, and they allowed him to throw 50 or 60 innings because it was always like, no, he's about to turn the corner. Whereas we know when we play these games, it's just like, no, this is a garbage card and I'm just
Right.
never going to use it. You might use it in
Right.
a blowout, but you're probably not going to recreate those 50 or 60 innings
Right.
pitched. You might get them 20 innings just for the sake of it. Like we're losing by 7 and it's the 8th inning, whatever.
Right. And I find in my replay that I'm not using the relief pitchers as much as they really did use. So I guess I keep the starters in longer. So
Yeah, and there are, fatigue rules obviously in the game engine that are designed to sort of help steer you that way, but I often think that's also something that's probably a little unavoidable for those of us replaying more modern seasons. I'm
right.
not going to get up in arms about it, but obviously, a lot of us grew up in an era where, pit starters tended to go 6 or 7 innings, or relievers
Right.
threw 5 or 6 outs. And sometimes
Right.
you have to like kind of put yourself in a different headspace when you're replaying a different season and say like, okay, they tend to in this year just go through the order twice, maybe into the 6th inning. Relievers tend to be somebody new every inning. Like you kind of
Yeah.
have to tell yourself to do it. And vice versa, when you're playing a 19th century season, you have to tell yourself, okay, even if this guy's given up 7 runs in the first 6 innings, he's probably still staying in there because they don't really have anybody else who can pitch worth a damn anyway. So here we
Well,
are.
I'm older than you are, and I can remember in the 60s, there were complete games, which you very rarely see anymore.
Sure. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Now it's pretty much just, if you have a shutout going, we'll probably let you go. But even then,
Right.
oh, you've hit 102 pitches after 8 innings. Nah, you're done.
Yeah.
And
But
again, I'm
I
not
truly do.
not
I
trying to
truly
judge.
do enjoy your game. I hope you continue publishing it.
Thanks, Dave. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it.
Hey, Chris, do you do anything to balance out cross-era differences?
No, because yeah,
I
I don't know.
either.
Yeah,
I-
I don't. That's always tricky. I think if you do that, you almost have to design the game engine from the beginning with the idea of this is designed for cross era play. So yes, I do not do that. You know, I think I can see that being useful when like a game company does something like, I don't know, we're putting out a set of, you know, Hall of Famer cards, and this is designed for putting together a league where it's just Hall of Famers. I can see that where maybe there's a little bit of smoothing out of the data so that things sort of line up better across era. But for seasons, no.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
You'd need to know who you're, what era you're normalizing it to as well, right?
That is
Yes.
true as well. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that's what some people do.
Just real quick, as a side note, I do want to thank Derek and Mark for inviting me, and I just wanted to say I think it's really cool that you guys are doing this. I've been following you on like blogs and stuff like that for a while, and I was at a orchestra rehearsal for one of my kids whenever it was, like last winter, and just happened to be checking my email real quickly and saw that Derek had invited me to do this. And I was just like, oh my God, this is really cool. So I love checking this out. Looking at the masthead on the SABR Gaming Committee page there just fills me with so much nostalgia. It's just everything in that masthead is just like, oh, I'm getting warm fuzzies. It's so cool.
We're happy to have you on, and it definitely, you know, it's super what you've done with the game here. I'll throw out one more question here, and hopefully we've got some others. I noticed that you said you're on version 3, so I was curious what you added between version 1 and now to the game, or what the changes were.
Let me see if I can figure that out. It's been a while. I thought at one point I had something like a blog that I was actually keeping, and I thought I had mentioned that at one point. Let me see. I don't want to take up too much time here. I think it's been so long, Derek, and my memory is not what it used to be, that I might have to really do a pretty deep look into all of that to figure out what it was that I changed between one version and another.
No,
looks
that's
like
fine. If you do come across the link, if you want to shoot it to me, and we can just post it when the video gets posted, or and also over on our website.
okay,
as well.
it looks for me like I know one of the changes was changing the way the stolen base engine worked. Another thing was changes that were made to accommodate pitcher fatigue and batters who hit into double plays rarely. Bunting rules were changed, and the previously mentioned sort of platoon approach for lefties and righties. And also, most recently, a couple of years ago, the card layouts were changed. So there's been a few things here and there. But I think I've been using the same rules now for 3 years. So, and at this point, I think my focus is more on creating new seasons and things like that. So I don't anticipate any changes to the rule book.
Did you
Or at
do
least
anything to accommodate all the rule changes, I guess, around, you know, the ghost runner and you know, the pick off attempts, and you know, the kind of the minutia that's been added in the last 5 years to cut down on game time? But I'm sure some of that might affect, you know, play if you wanted to allow it to.
Yeah, I can't think that any of those have really affected anything. I know there was a time where the area on the cards where it lists like a pitcher fatigue, there were certain pitchers where it was very much denoted that it was obvious this was designed to be like, you know, a loogie, as they used to call them, left-handed one-out guy only. And but now, because, you know, guys have to face 3 batters, you're not really seeing so many of those cards. But there are certain years that you'll find some of those cards exist. I'm trying to think of some of those names from the past, but drawing a blank right now.
You, in a few words, just talk about how defense works in the game.
Yeah, that did not come up, but every player is rated 1 through 5, and that is, I didn't want to mention other game companies, but yes, that is a little bit more of a, app basic type approach. I guess Strat Basic also does the same thing. And yeah, it was again something that, like I've discussed a few times, I thought, well, I could do split ratings for range and error. That's totally fine. I can, but I didn't want to. I was just like, just keep it simple. There was something I always sort of loved about the simplicity of those systems, instead of like, I have to do this one roll to see if they get to the ball, to make an out, shortstop trying to cover a ball in the hole, or a different role for, oh, this one is to see if it eats them up or whatever. And I just wanted something that was just more of a composite rating. But the fielding ratings are based on both. They're just sort of smushed into one magic number. But yeah, you could have a guy who, maybe my formulas say based on his range alone, he should be a 4, but his fielding percentage is so awful, for example, that it actually drops him down to a 3. And, vice versa. You might have a guy whose range is just so, but he's a shortstop with a 997 fielding percentage, and it's like, oh, well, now he's up to a 4. So hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect.
Oh, I don't, but yes, there are roles on the batter card, sorry, that do say DEF. And that is when you do have a check for a defensive check. And at that point, there's a separate defensive chart that is season specific. You roll on that, and it'll basically tell you which player needs to be checked, and whether they turn it into a double play ball, or it gets past them for a single, or they boot it and make an error, all those kinds of things.
Chris, you kind of answered one of the questions that I had, because I noticed in your playthrough, you really focused just on results coming directly off the cards. So besides the defensive chart, are there any other ancillary charts that have to be referenced?
Yeah, I mean, I can share my screen again here. Let's see. Hold on, I'll get that up. I tried to keep as much directly off the cards as possible. I'm not a big fan of having to constantly check rule books and charts if at all possible. So
Definitely
the rule
speeds
book,
up play. Yeah.
yeah, it helps if a game engine is, the rules aren't too complicated and you can kind of memorize things. Like maybe the first couple times you look it up, and then after a while you're like, no, I got it, that's fine. But yes, there are a few charts that'll show things like how runner advancement works based on the type of hit and the run rating of the base runners. Same deal with fly balls, ground outs. So that's one chart, or one page worth of charts that you might have to check a few times a game. There's things that happen with, you can kind of decide whether or not you're going to send the runner. Sometimes it's just completely automatic. Yes, this guy's definitely going 2 bases from first on that hit. Oh, and other times it's, well, you can try. This is where you might get thrown out on the bases. There's rules for cutting the ball off if you're just trying to concede. There are charts for bunting, hit and run. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Besides the like I said, sort of fielding charts that also show up.
Are players rated for arm strength, specifically outfielders, or they just have that one defensive rating?
The outfielders are just one, blanket defensive rating. It's hard because I'm such a baseball history nerd. Like I really just loved, when I was a kid, going through like the baseball encyclopedia, that huge weapon of a book that they used to publish. And it's hard for me sometimes when because I want to publish old seasons. I love publishing old seasons, but it's not like StatCast was available to me then. And I want to sort of have a blanket process for the most part for modern and old seasons. I strongly prefer, that doesn't mean I always do, but I prefer to use stats that are available in any year. And that makes, giving arm ratings to players a little bit tricky sometimes. Not to mention sometimes players just rack up assist totals because their arms are horrible and people are more willing to run on them. It doesn't mean just because one center fielder has 13 assists and another one only has 4, it doesn't mean the guy with 13 actually has a better arm. It just means people were more likely to, or it doesn't just mean, it could mean people were just more willing to try to run an extra base on that guy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's always a tug of war, right, between playability and how complex you want to make the game, because I've been a big APA player my whole life, and I've played the basic and the master game. Basic game, very playable, but sort of constricted in the amount of things that you can do. But then you go into the master game with the outfielder arm ratings and the hit ratings, and then all of a sudden you start to do all this crazy math, and it takes away from the playability of the game. And I've read articles, not just on Apple, but on others, that the increased complexity doesn't necessarily increase the statistical accuracy of the replay. It's almost really identical in terms of accuracy.
Yeah, and I mean, not that I play a ton of board games, but there have been times where, I've been to parties or something and somebody's like, we're going to play this board game. And then they say, okay, first we have to learn how to play the game. And they pull out this manual that's got 50 pages in it. And I'm just like, screw that. I have no interest. Like it's like you said, you kind of have to, I think it's important to sort of find that happy balance between playability and realism. Like I want it to be fun. I don't want it to be a homework assignment. So Mark will probably know. Mark, what about year was it when like Junior Felix was playing outfield for the Blue Jays? Is that like late 80s, early 90s? I don't know. I just remember that was a year that I tried to play. Joe is saying yes. That was a year that I tried to play APFA's master version. And yeah, I appreciated the features that were there, but I think in the end I was just like, I'm not enjoying this as much. I'd rather just strip it down and play the simpler version. So there's no right or wrong answer there. I guess it's whatever you like, but I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yes, Joe.
Just wanted to comment. You talked about keeping rules simple. Your rules are some of the best I've read.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
And I truly appreciate the drive for simplicity and the drive to be easier on my eyes.
Awesome. I have contacts in right now. Don't be fooled. I usually do wear glasses. So.
Hey, Chris, you alluded to it a minute ago, but what are your primary data sources?
Yeah, the ones you'd expect. Baseball Reference, Fangraphs, all those good sites. Yeah, I don't think our world as fans exists without those guys. They're pretty great.
Without revealing any of your secrets, I mean, to what extent do you incorporate any modern metrics, sabermetrics or otherwise, or maybe it's just a yes or no question?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of a good way to answer that. I think the quick answer is there's no, I guess, popular sabermetric stats that are used in the card formulas. However, I would say that a lot of my formulas that they're sort of proprietary, and I would say a lot of them are informed by sort of modern analytics.
That's fair.
I tend to be pro analytics, so I tend to be up to date on things that are on, Baseball Prospectus. Does Baseball Prospectus even exist anymore? I don't remember, but all of those types of sites that used to go on, Hardball Times, Fangraphs, all those sites. So read a lot of publications. So I think it's always like rolling around in my head. And like I said, it'll sort of help inform how I'll come up with some of the formulas, even if it's not based strictly on some pre-existing sabermetric stat.
I have one other question, but I'll wait until others have their chance.
I think you should. Oh, Tony, let's jump in.
Yep. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Tony.
Hey, so what is there a part of the game that you're not completely happy with that you'd still like to tweak a little bit?
Great question. I think that probably the number one part is still the stolen base aspect, but the more I've thought about it over the years, the more I've just started to consider it sort of like the white whale that just cannot be caught. It's just like there's no definitive answer to this. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? I think it should be completely driven by the card results, and the manager's left out of it. And other times I think the total opposite. So that's kind of where right now the rules sort of settled on kind of an in-between spot. And so I'm not happy with it, but I'm also not sure that I have any concept of like what I would do differently. I think it's just sort of like a necessary evil at this point.
Another question for you. What is the toughest type of player for you to capture and recreate, other than, say, statistical fringe players?
I think there's been a lot of stuff that's written about sequencing, right? So like just the idea that if a guy pitches 4 innings, for example, and gives up 4 hits, but he's only giving up 1 hit in each inning, he's got a pretty decent chance of having a 0 ERA, right? But if he gives up his 4 hits altogether, he's probably given up 2 runs, and now he has a 2.25 ERA or something like that. And there's just no, those sorts of things don't always come out in these card formulas in a way that, it's hard to do it, I guess. Like, if I'm making sense, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Yeah.
You see some of those games or seasons like Bob Gibson's 1968 season, and it's kind of hard, I think, a lot of times for game engines to accurately sort of replicate that kind of a season, or wins and losses, which I know, most people nowadays don't care about. I think I'm sorry, I tend to be in that camp also, but it's like recreating Denny McClain's 30-win season. It's like, forget it. That's like, it's a statistical anomaly. It's going to be hard for any game engine to replicate that outside of really manipulating things so that their, hits allowed rates are a lot better. Now you're skewing their ERA. So I don't know.
Yeah. My last question, because I know others probably have questions, but where did you come up with your name? Not Chris, but name for your game.
Not a big fan of that. I'll blame my mom for that one. But yeah, I think just when I was putting together the game engine and sort of noodling around with things, like that feature just sort of came out to the foreground. Like, oh, what if there's like I think I almost wanted like a feeling of suspense on certain die rolls, if you're rooting for the team that's at bat, it's like, oh, heck yeah, deep drive, here we go. And if you're rooting against the team that's at bat, you're like, oh God, bench just crushed it. It's going back and you're getting nervous. And I kind of wanted an occasional second roll that needed to be made. So I don't remember who said it, but sort of akin to like the split roll on a strat card. The difference being there that, in a lot of cases, you're just doing a split roll, if I recall correctly, to see if it's a home run or a triple or a home run or a double. Like, it's not always a chance for an out. I wanted that section of the card it's probably an extra base hit, but there is always a chance that it is not an extra base hit. It might be an out. So I just wanted to add a little bit of drama there. And again, once the game engine started to come together, I was like, I kind of like that feature of the game, and that was just the one that I used. There was actually a different name I wanted to use for the game originally, and when I went to copyright my rule set and all the layouts of the cards, I found that it was already taken, and the domain was taken as well. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna have to go to a different game name. So ended up with Deep Drive Baseball.
Oh, very cool. Well, it's a fabulous game. I play it a lot. The
Oh,
deep
cool.
drive feature is a very cool feature, and it really does capture exactly what you're trying to accomplish. There's that
Awesome.
little excitement, what's going to happen. And so you have a really elegant game captured in a very simple package. And it's a combination of many things, and it's just a lot of fun to play.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony. I'm very flattered. That was what I was hoping for. So I love hearing that. That's cool.
So this is a bit of a rhetorical and or personal question. So answer it however you will, but I've spent a lot of the last 2 years reverse engineering games from the 70s.
Okay.
And bringing them back to life essentially by having the ability to create player cards for the old game engine. And, in the process, I searched for the original creators, but they're either very old or very cold at this point. And it caused me to think about not about your game necessarily, but other games that I know are kind of one-man shows, and whether any of these one-man shows have given any thought to a succession plan. Because I've seen on the Delphi forums, like Ballpark Baseball, I'll use that as an example. I learned about that in the last year and did a video on it. And the creator or creators are like 90 years old, and one day the website was frozen in time and they're not doing anything else, and they didn't sell the business even though they tried. And so, in your case, you could have a legacy that could live on for decades, even though you're probably just doing this for fun. But I don't know if you've given any thought to something like that.
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm such a pain, Steve. I'm sorry. I don't know why they invited me. This was a huge mistake.
This was perfect.
But
This was
no,
perfect.
I think, like you said, it's just been such a side hobby right now, and like so many other people, I think, I think I just watched your interview with, was it Joe Bryan, Payoff Pitch, which I think is a really cool game engine. I really like his game. Played it a few times. But I think so many of us, it's just like, well, we have full-time jobs, we're married, we have kids, we have other hobbies. We just, this is just something that's like, I might work on this a few hours on the weekend, and that's about all I can manage without turning into a horrible father, So, but yeah, I, if I find out I have some sort of terminal illness, I will release all of my formulas to the public. How about that? We'll let other
Fair
people
enough.
create more seasons.
Fair enough. Just what I need another spreadsheet to make.
What are some of the other games, Steve? I know I've
So,
seen, like I said, I've lurked sometimes and seen other people reverse engineer past games, and I always find it interesting to go
I'm
see.
not the first to do this one, but the Sports Illustrated baseball game, which came out with the color charts initially.
Okay, yeah, I think I've seen those
It's
threads
a
before.
pitcher first, batter second model. I've been working actually. I mean, the formulas are somewhat in the public domain, but I've put hundreds of hours into my own spreadsheet, and a friend of mine is automating it into software so that he'll be able to create teams with a push of a button.
Awesome.
And we're a few months away from that, but there's another game that's very similar to that. I'm actually working on it, round 2 of the analysis. It's called Batter Up. It
Okay.
was almost identical.
I don't know that one.
It's almost identical to Sports Illustrated. You can tell they said we can just do this, but we can do it better. And I'll leave it at that. You can look up my videos.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time on that, and we've been creating teams and posting them to Facebook for that. There was a similar game called Grand Slam. I made a spreadsheet and made one team, but it was too hard, so I stopped there. And then one that's kind of analogous to yours was Long Ball, which was about half Strat, half APA.
Okay.
So the front end was Strat, with a pure 50/50 engine. And the back half is look up numerical results and read them off of one of the 8 on base boards, or numbers on base situation. And so we've been making teams for that old game too, because it has all these have nostalgic appeals.
Mhm.
I can think of many games, including yours now, that modern games that just buy those, and you're decades ahead of where those games were in many respects. But I'm very nostalgic, so I like keeping those old games alive, and people kind of appreciated the work. But
I love it. No, that's great. Yes, I tend to be, again, when I'm lurking on those forums, like my servers are just full of folder after folder after folder of old game engines that like people like you have posted the formulas and the spreadsheets, and I've been like, oh, I don't know this game, but they've posted the rules. I've got to collect it. I need to see how it works. I want to see how the formulas work to create a team. And then, like you said, a lot of times I start going down the rabbit hole of I'm going to code everything up to start reverse engineering and creating all these teams. And then I have to sort of rein myself in and say, Chris, you have other things going on in your life right now. You don't have time to start reverse engineering another game. Stop. You're out of control. You need help.
that's where I am. Okay, thanks.
Well, I respect it. I get it. And thank you for all your work you've done. That's awesome. I'm sure I've pulled down work you've done before then, probably. Anything else here? I'm not looking at the chat. Maybe I'm supposed
Yeah.
to.
No, we're just making fun of
Junior Felix.
Junior Felix. Although he was traded for Devon White, who was instrumental in the 2 World Series
There you
wins
go.
by the Jays. So there you go. Of course,
I actually,
Anaheim, which is Derek's team, so that makes it even better.
Yeah, that was another great trade by the Angels. Yeah. I think we got Luis Soho in that deal too. So.
nice.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So
I actually rooted for the Jays in the 90s, so I got a lot of those names in my head here.
yeah, well, they're losing some supporters. Anyway, this is not Jays talk. Although we could have a Jays talk. I think we'd have like just me, but that's beside the point.
I mean, I'll listen. It's fine.
Anybody else have any questions, or anybody who's asked questions have any more questions?
Crickets.
Crickets.
Go
Like
get
I
me.
said, I mean, this was so easy to follow. So,
Awesome.
I
Yes.
think sometimes easy is good. Making things much more simple. Derek, you got some announcements about our next speakers. You keep the schedule on that.
I do, but before I forget, Chris, you want to announce where you can locate your game and the rules and all that stuff?
Oh, sure. That would make sense. Yeah, if you go to, let's make sure it's right, but I think if you just go to deepdrivebaseball.com, it comes to basically a blog that I don't update often enough, but at the top of that page, you will see a link to store, and that will take you to a store that is hosted by a company called Selfie, and you can buy seasons there. They're $15 for a season. There are also some packages available where it's just the pennant winners from a season, and those tend to be $3, I believe. Currently have 23 seasons available, at least one from each decade, 1880 through the present, as well as every season, 2016 to present inclusive. I think I mentioned I put out a poll a little bit ago about seasons people wanted to see. So there's a lot more 60s and 70s seasons coming out because those tend to be the most popular, even though I, and probably Joe as well, like to see seasons, like from before Babe Ruth. But I'm
Even
different.
during Babe Ruth.
All right, I'll give you that. But yes, I would love to see more some of those 1870s seasons, for example, but I don't know that anybody is interested in buying them. I'm still going to make them at some point, but whatever. And also for anybody who's actually still listening, I did add a promo code SABR, SABR. If you enter that at checkout, that's 10% off for the rest of the week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Couple other things. Yes, we do have a guest for October. It's Alex Arath, and he was the programmer for the ESPN Baseball Tonight game that came out for Super Nintendo. He's also involved with Roblox. So if your children or grandchildren are familiar with Roblox, we can blame Alex a bit. So anyway, he's on October 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern. And Mark, what time would that be for you? 5 p.m.
Yep, that's 5 p.m. Pacific.
Pacific time, right?
Wait, though I'm on holidays. I don't teach again till January. So, man, I don't know what time anything is anymore.
Hey, some of us got to work, you know. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I think Dave brought this up earlier, but with the with regards to replay results, we do have a section on our website where you can post your replays. So if anybody's interested in doing that, you can reach out to us through the website or through our social media. We've got the Facebook page and so forth. But if you go over to saberbaseballgaming.com, register, create an account, and then you can post articles, replays, and so forth. So pretty sure that's all I got right now. We've got a few other guests in the works, but nothing official to announce other than October for now.
What was the date again in October?
8th.
The 8th, October 8th, 8 p.m. Eastern.
That's before I go to Europe for 3.5 weeks.
Nice.
Not going to see the World Series, but that's okay because the Jays aren't going to be in it. So what does it matter?
Where are you going in Europe?
We're starting. Well, first I got to go to Ontario for my niece's wedding, and then Portugal, and we have to be in Barcelona for the last week because my wife's partner's meeting is in Barcelona this year. So every 4 years they go international and tell them to bring the spouses.
Hey, have
Nice.
fun.
I will.
Great city. Yeah.
I will.
Northern Spain is great.
Yeah, I don't know. My wife's planned it all. It was stressing me out.
Okay.
You're going to miss the running of the Bulls, though, right?
Yeah, they're not running that time of year, and nor is there any bullfights that time of year. I'm hoping to see the equivalent of a Premier League soccer game, and I could go see FC Barcelona and Real Madrid play. Tickets are about 800 euros to buy, so that is not in the plan. We'll go watch the bottom two teams. I really don't care. I just want to go see one at that level.
Well, the food and the wine is good all year, Mark, so you'll be fine.
Yes.
I love seafood, so yeah.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
Okay, anybody, anything more for Chris instead of my travels?
Great job,
Just-
Chris. I don't know the game, but I'm certainly going to check it out. It takes a lot of courage to put together a passion project like yours, and it sounds, based on the feedback, you did an awesome job. So
Thanks so much, Andy. And thank you
kudos
again to
Yeah.
everybody that was here. I really sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll put a video up on my channel here at some point too.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Well, go spend some time with your family.
Oh, yeah.
Aw.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys. Thank you so
Hey,
much. Take care.
Thanks for coming on, Chris. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks
Bye.
again. Take care.